All right, well, I'm gonna go ahead and get live here. Sorry, a few minutes earlier, or excuse me, later than I expected to. Obviously have to do the normal "can you hear me" kind of thing, although I am monitoring my own channel as well. And it seems like the latency is actually pretty good today, so hopefully if anyone has any questions, we'll be able to follow along with them. I am simulcasting on Twitch today, which also appears to be working. So we will get this going. For those of you, thank you, Adrian, for letting me know that you could hear me. For those of you who were not here for the first episode, I did this, what I tried to make to be a very simple getting started with C++ conversation. And we just were aiming for like a hello world, but a hello world that had some IO in it. And we're using lib format so that it is easier to do some IO output here. And in this episode, I wanted to talk about making functions in C++. So I see that people are still kind of joining in. It's got 39 views at the moment. I do have some tea. Hopefully you also have some tea available to you. Nice warming beverage. So in this episode, like I said, I want to cover functions and creating your own functions. And so if you are joining late, you should be able to do the DVR feature. You should be able to rewind and start over on this. And so hopefully this will be good. Now, like I said, I am simulcasting on Twitch. Yeah, so we've only got 5 viewers over there, but the chat messages are shared between Twitch and YouTube. So if anyone posts a comment on either of those, it will get shared to the other one. All right, so what I have here in the function that I specifically want to make, and you'll see why I say in the description that I'm going to take a distinctly C++ 20 view on this. It's because I'm going to do things that are only possible with a C++ 20 compiler, but things that I feel like should be our default for how we create functions today. So do let me know, of course, if there is any problem with quality or anything like that, although from my perspective, what I can see monitoring with my other computer, it looks like it's probably fine here. I want to create a function that returns whether or not this value is even or odd. And we've got some comments about floating point versus integral math in here from before. Now, there is a URL in the last stream, and I also tweeted it. So I'm going to post that in the messages right now. If you can give me just one moment. And Jamal, I am attempting at the moment to create a list of videos that start from the beginning. So that's where we are in your request. I am trying to do that right now. I don't have very many videos that actually teach C++ from the beginning. That's not the kind of thing that I specialized in. And I always kind of felt like I wasn't necessarily the best person to teach C++ from the beginning, but I thought I would give it a shot with a few live streams and see where things go. So if you have that Compiler Explorer link, then you have exactly where we are right now with this code. And for those of you who are wondering, I am using Compiler Explorer because it gives us a handy way of live editing the code and then seeing the results over here. So I can add dude here to this, and we're going to get Jason was here dude as soon as it prints. So we're also getting this even or odd printed out for each iteration of this while loop counter, and we can modify these things again and just see how it changes the output straight away. And for some extra fun, since even and odd are different lengths, we might try something like this and put a tab character in there, which should fairly nicely line up the columns. There we go. So that's cool. Okie dokie. So yeah, we just had our first spam bot try to spam us, and it was deleted by my Streamlabs anti-spam bot, so that's helpful. So I want to create this function that determines whether or not a value is even or odd. Now in C++20, it might look something like this. Let's call it that. So we're saying if the value that was passed to us divided by 2 is equal to 0, then it is even. If it's divided by 2, if the remainder is equal to 0, then it is even. And sure enough, we should expect this to work. So if we replace this right here, and we ask, is the counter value that's currently passed to us even or not? And we were to spell even correctly, then we should get the exact same output from our program. I should also oh, it didn't delete it from the Twitch chat. That's helpful. All right. All right, just a moment. I'm not actually set up to do that right now, but I can be in a moment. Sorry, just trying to deal with some spam here. La 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 la. You all can entertain yourselves for the moment, perhaps, while I get set up for that. Sorry for the disruption. Sorry that we have to deal with spam bots. Okay, I am logged in and I have the chat, but I don't see any way to delete the message. Yeah, the spam is not deleted from Twitch. There's the message. And how do I delete that one message? I do not see any way to delete an individual message. And I have the problem that it was rebroadcast by the restreamer bot onto Twitch, so I can't block the entire restreamer bot. So that's really special. I really don't know what to do with this. Guess I don't have much of an option at the moment. All right, sorry about that. All right, so let's see. We had a comment saying, wonder if auto function parameters and TRT will be easier to understand for people who have seen Python. I don't know. But let's try to get back to this conversation. So we're asking if I divide the value by 2 and the remainder is 0, then that is something that is even. So 1 divided by 2 has a remainder of 1, that's odd. 2 divided by 2 has a remainder of 0, that is even. 3 divided by 2 has a remainder of 1, right? Like it works. And this works for negative values as well. Negative 2 divided by 2 has a remainder of 0. So that works. These guys use INI files with all the functions being const expert in line. It's INL files. Oh, INL files. I have seen organizations that make all of their functions const expert in line. I'm not planning to talk about const expert at this exact moment, but we could in a little bit here. So what I want to cover with this particular function is, let's just say I want to write some output here. I'm going to get rid of this, and we'll have the while loop for the moment. But before it, I just want to do a quick print. I want to say is 3.4 even? And I'm going to call my isEven function with the value 3.4. And so I get this invalid operands for type const double and int to binary operator %. So the compiler is stopping us from doing anything particularly silly. But it might not be obvious what the compiler is stopping us from doing, if you're not familiar with this. So if I say, is 3.4 divided by 2 even or odd, it's a nonsensical question in C++, because 3.4 is a floating point value. 3.4 divided by 2 is 1.7. So there's no remainder when I divide a floating point number by 2. So the compiler doesn't let us do this, particularly if we have all of our warnings and whatever turned on. It doesn't make sense to ask the question, is this value divided by, is this floating point value have a divided by 2 have a remainder of 0? So one thing that we can do is explicitly make this an integer. So we could say, I require that an integer be passed to me. Now I get this, conversion from double to int changes value. So I'm getting a warning from the compiler saying that I passed in approximately 3.4, and it was being truncated to a 3. And now the code compiles. That's not great. It's also really not necessarily the best thing that we want. So I could, again, say is 45 billion even or not. And by the way, this is totally valid in C++. I can use these tick marks. I don't need that extra double quote. wait for it to compile. And now I get this overflow warning and a conversion from long int. Let's go ahead and add some new lines to the end of these prints. Okay, so I get, is this value even? True, but I have this overflow conversion warning. So what is happening is I've given it something that doesn't fit in an int. I've given it a very large number. It doesn't fit inside of an int. So making this explicitly an int doesn't really necessarily solve our problem either. So for those of you who are asking, like, maybe auto would be more understandable to someone coming from a Python background or whatever. And by the way, please feel free to comment, where you're coming from as you're watching this video. Auto had its own problem. Int has its own problem. It's too limiting. Auto is too wide open. Int is too limiting. So we're going to do this. I'm going to tell the compiler I want any integral value. And that is, I say, it's an integral. Auto, I don't care what type of integral it is. Just divide the thing by 2 and tell me if the remainder is equal to 0 or not. And now I get a really handy error because it's saying no match for function call to is even for a double value. And that's correct. We don't want to even be able to ask this question. This saves us from ourselves. So if we comment this out, then the code should compile and execute again. All right, let's see how bad of a spam I just got to Twitch that I also can't delete again, probably. Oh, just a comment that you're coming from Germany. That's fine. I don't think that should be a spam message. Oh, it's because it had an emoji in it. Sorry. We had problems in the past with lots of emojis, so I had to disable all emojis and comments. So sorry about that. Cool. Awesome to see everyone stopping by. Message retracted. All right, we'll see what that was about in a moment here. Right, so now I can pass in anything that's an integral type. I can even ask, is this negative 45 billion and 1 value even or not? Oh, that's interesting. Is 45 billion even? Oh, I got a mismatch. I got a mismatch between my two different values here. That's great, isn't it? So, wow, it's so easy to get a mismatch between your comment and your actual code here. So what if you had a custom int? That's what you're asking. So if you have your own custom defined thing that acts like an integer, that's not going to work here. That's a relatively rare thing to do, but that would definitely be a deeper topic when I want to talk about creating your own types in a couple more weeks when I get back to this conversation here. Format does exist in the standard lib, yes, but print does not exist. Format print does not exist in the standard library. What we get in the standard library would have to be something like this. Now the problem is only Visual Studio supports this so far. So we're just using lib format, and we have done that You can see right here this bright green libraries button says that the current library that I have enabled is format. So we are using the format library here. The compiler doesn't read comments and neither do I. That's a great point. All right, so that's a great point. Functions are an outstanding way in any programming language to stop repeating ourselves. It's so easy to copy and paste a value or a function or something and just repeat ourselves all over the place, and it leads to terrible code. So let's just do this. Probably should have left that 45 billion in here. Something like that. To play any arbitrary set of game events back. Oh, I see. Streamlabs is still repeating the last time I did a live stream, which was stream, which was quite a while ago. I need to change my Streamlabs bot settings. This is very exciting. It's amazing when you don't do a lot of streaming for a while, how out of sync all of your things might get. Let's just change that bot setting real quick. I'm just gonna disable that. Okay. Why is auto print is even instead of void? Isn't void more clear? Auto deduction depends on the value used. Yes. So in this particular case, it is choosing a signed 64-bit integer that's going to be compiler dependent, but it has to pick, in a way we don't care, but it has to pick a value that is, a type that is big enough to actually hold that value. So using another C++20 thing, let's just give this a quick shot. We'll see how well it works. I'm working on it, so I'm getting compile errors as I'm typing because it's compiling the things. Let's look this up and make sure we get it right. So C++20 lets us, it has this function called source location, and it lets us from anywhere say, what function am I currently in? Well, that sounds like that could be interesting in this case. Did I get that right? Looks like I did. Oh, that is a function, okay. now I need to, this is something that you definitely have to get used to in C++, is you have to tell the compiler that you want to be able to use this feature. So if we're using cppreference.com here, this should be probably your primary reference for looking up things. Yeah, C++ 20 is stable. Should concepts be introduced to beginners to help them with passing incorrect stuff with auto? That is exactly what I'm doing right now. In fact, stood integral is a concept. I was avoiding using that word, but that is absolutely what it is. So source location. Source location. And there. You can right click and hit shift format current document. So we get a nice little formatting of this, and we can see from auto print is even with auto equal to long int. So we actually can see the compiler's telling us right here that it was using a long int, which is the question that several of you were asking. If I delete a few values from this, then the compiler can tell us that this is going to be an int. And we see it right here. We passed an int to it. Oh yeah, funny that you just missed the standard is integral. Yeah, so that's the idea. Now, in this print is even, you'll notice that I did not constrain it. This is what we're saying. We have an auto value. Do I want to constrain it or not? And at the moment, I'm not constraining the print is even, although it probably makes sense. Does it make sense? Maybe it makes sense. Let's do this. We can constrain it, like we were just saying, and then we can actually create another version of the function. And we can say, so now we can say that we just don't have any way of knowing if this thing is even or not because you passed us something that's not integral. We don't know if it's even. And I could call a function like this, and the compiler is going to choose the correct version. So when I passed in an integer, I get negative 45 million is even, true, and it was called from this version. Hello world is even, we have no way of knowing that from this thing that takes a const character pointer. And then I often find when I'm doing stuff like this that I like to kind of put the printed thing in tick marks so I know what the user parameter was. Why can you only watch at 144p? I am sorry, I don't know. I am seeing 720p on my view of the stream. So then this raises a couple of really good questions. Some of you asked, why did I put auto here instead of void? Void is interesting. Not a lot of programming languages have a concept of void, of something that's not a type, basically. Good. Glad that you got that. The playback picked up, Philip. Okay, yeah, good. It looks like the stream quality is okay. I'm getting some errors that I'm not sending enough keyframes, but I'm blaming Restreamer on that, honestly. I don't know what this is going to look like in the future if I'm going to keep using Restreamer. I like it in some ways I don't. I've got 8 viewers coming from Twitch right at the moment, and what, like 60? Something like that coming from YouTube. Okay, so this is, I think, pretty neat. So let's make a save of this. We're just going to do this copy short link here, and I'm going to add in here. So I say our first function with an overload. This is not something that all programming languages allow. And in fact, very few commonly used programming languages allow type-based overloading. So this is what we're doing. Now, I say integer types here. There's a very wide range of types that are integrals, integer types in C++. And then I am providing an overload. Now I'm going to put a quick poll. Do I think it can replace this standard enable if and previous Sven? Yeah, I don't use Sven at all anymore. I can't stand. I've never liked Sven. Concepts easily get rid of Sven. So I'm going to put in a quick poll. If you don't know what Sven is, then feel good about yourself, I guess. And the poll is going to be... Do you like trailing return types? All right. I'm asking if you like trailing return types. And so type name. Not in this code, right? Okay. I'm going to demonstrate what trailing return types are. Now, these functions, print as even, these things are not returning a value at all. So it is fair to say that this is a void function. It does not return a value. It is a void function. We could return something. I can think of several things that we could return, actually. And this one also does not return a value. It's possible to specify like this. Let's see, 52% of you at the moment say that you prefer trailing return types. So now that I actually have it on the screen, this is going to be more familiar for you depending on which programming language you might have come from. Now, if you are looking at this, you can see all of this is an experiment. I've never taught programming from first principles before. So I need to know if you think that when I'm teaching C++ to very beginners, if I should say that this is, if I should put void at the front or if I should put void at the back, basically. You like using trailing to return types if the value type is ambiguous. So you would say, you wouldn't even put a return type on here at all. You might go for this auto and just let the compiler automatically deduce it. That you like trailing return types, not that you prefer them. That's interesting. From Twitch, specifically in C++, I don't like it because it's not uniform with basically all other code one might find. Okay. Someone got a timeout. So yeah, you have to be careful with emoji and things that might get interpreted as emojis by GitHub. Excuse me, by GitHub? Why did I say by GitHub? By YouTube, Streamlabs. I don't know. One of these things. You're not a beginner, but you're used to older C++. Well, if you're used to older C++, we're already like doing things that were nearly impossible in older C++. Extremely difficult to do. So let's just look at this one then. Auto is even here. Now, I think for the sake of consistency, I am going to go ahead and do trailing return types. It is what you'll see in a lot of modern examples, and so I'm going to do that to be consistent with it. We could specify that this is a bool. I'm specifying that it's a bool, and I am doing a Boolean expression. I'm checking to see, is this thing equal to 0 or not? Let's just say I did not have this trailing return, or say I didn't specify the return type, and instead I return something like this, accidentally. So what am I returning? I'm returning 1 or 0, which in C++ world can be interpreted as true or false. And I'm doing this check is even down here. And honestly, I'm pretty surprised that I'm not getting some kind of a warning from the compiler, because this thing is returning an integer. And this thing is checking to see if an integer is true. Like, that's a little scary, right? I'm reading the comments. Should beginners be able to read other C++ code, or you just want them to write it? I definitely would like both, but I also want to, so that there's the catch-22 there. If you're asking the question, do I want beginners to be able to read C++ code or only write it? Now, if I say yes, they should be able to read all of the C++ code that's out there, then I have to start by teaching them things that are considered absolutely terrible practice today. I would prefer that the beginner see something that's terrible practice and say, wow, I don't even know how to read that because it's such terrible practice. I kind of like that idea. I want to start with the best practices, and then if they need to, they can learn how to read the older or bad practice stuff. Tyrannosaur says, I'm open to potentially adopting trailing return types, but I'm not sure what's best in terms of teaching beginners, right? Referencing documentation is pretty much a necessity for you, so using CVP reference would happen often regardless. That's true. Here is where I would have a trailing return type because the ambiguous behavior. Yeah, welcome to C land. The reason I'm confused is because I have WAll, WExtra, WConversion of C++20 enabled here, and WShadow and WPedantic. So it should be warning me that I'm implicitly checking for a integer value to be true or false. I consider this actually to be a bug in the compiler at the moment. So let's do a quick compiler upgrade and see if I get a warning. Well, that's taking a long time to compile. I still don't get a warning. Find that distressing. I could try Clang. So an interesting part of learning to program in C++ is that we have many compilers available to us. Not every programming language has that advantage. Some people consider it to be a disadvantage, but it lets us come to at least a de facto conclusion as to what is actually considered standard C++. Yeah, Clang doesn't support source location. You're saying it's not a narrowing conversion, so it's fine with it. I still thought that we would get a warning on it. Let's get a warning on it. We can definitely get a warning on it. Let's go ahead up here to Tools. I just managed to choose ARM GCC. I have to have a talk with Matt about that. No, I'm just kidding. Is Matt here? I don't think Matt's here. Let's get this back to that and executing mode. Okay, great. So let's add a tool. We're going to add a tool, and we're going to add a tool called Clang Tidy. Now, Clang Tidy is a static analysis tool. That's not going to work because I'm using source location. So that's exciting. Let's try a different tool. All right, never mind. I'm just going to have to throw my hands up here. It seems that our compilers are not helping us out today. Try adding a trailing return type and see if it does warn. All right, so I'm explicitly saying this is an int. No warnings. I'm going to explicitly say that this is a double, which interestingly that still definitely give me a warning. Oh no, it won't definitely give me a warning because I'm doing an int to a double conversion, so that probably won't warn. And now I'm checking to see if a double is true or false or not. Yeah, so bad GCC in this case, I apologize, but let's just go ahead and specify that this is a Boolean. So now, yeah, there we go. And it's the answer is going to be wrong, right? Did anyone notice this, that I actually changed the logic of this whole time? So I'm getting odd for 10 because I had removed this explicit check for the value being equal to 0. Maybe dash narrowing conversion is not enabled in the warnings. Let's take a look at that. That's something that we spent a little bit of time on last time. There we go, GCC list of warnings. I have dash W conversion enabled specifically. Do warn about implicit conversions from arithmetic operations, even when conversions of operations to the same type cannot change their values. That would be, yeah. All right, so this affects W conversion. Implicit conversions that may alter a value. Okay, and you said... no, the language doesn't require it. I'm trying to get the comment on the stream was, I don't think the language requires the expression of an if statement to be a bool. It has to be something that can be evaluated as a Boolean. I'm just trying to get the compiler to warn us that we're doing something that looks wrong. So this is conversions that may alter value. That's a good one. Warnings about conversions between signed and unsigned integers are disabled by default in C++ unless signed conversion is enabled. Do not warn about. Yeah. Trigraphs, C++ compatibility, write strings. This is where we just were, conversion. Enum conversions, sign conversions, float conversions. That's enabled by W conversion, that's enabled by W conversion. Yeah, okay. Warn about Boolean expressions compared with... Warn about suspicious operations with... Okay, that's enabled by W all. All right, sorry. We're going to just stop going down that rabbit hole. It doesn't seem that we're going to get any reasonable answer from the compiler on this today. Yeah, all right. Then maybe we won't stop yet. Turns on W narrowing. W narrowing. You're not going to give me a description of what W narrowing is? Come on. Well, let's just go ahead and turn on W narrowing real quick. And then we will move past this. I really am trying to make sure. All right, so W narrowing, int. No, I'm just not going to get a warning from the compiler today here. That's very annoying. Yeah, it's int to bool that's bothering me here, not bool to int. All right, well, okay. That was a little bit of a rabbit hole. Sorry about that. I was planning to stream for about an hour today. Oh, now we've got 71 people joining us, though. I'm planning to do a much, much longer stream at some point in the future that won't be purely educational. It'll just be me hacking on a project, but I think it'll be a project that you all will find interesting, and it will be, you know, I'm sure not nearly as exciting as the C++ Doom port that I did a couple of years ago, which that thing has gotten several 100,000 views now, but unfortunately I was unable to monetize it. So that's a thing. So the question was, yeah, right. So Austin just asked if I could return value mod 2, that would be an int, but I was explicitly forcing the compiler to convert it to an int here. And I'm trying to get a warning down here in this call to isEven, because that should warn if it's not a Boolean. It's evaluating an integer as a Boolean. So let that just be a lesson here that there are, you know, things in C++ that can be hard to get right because of implicit conversions that can happen. Yes, I agree. So to make a reference to a comment here from DBZM1K3, I am attempting here for the sake partially of teaching, but it's also how I personally program, to create an environment where the compiler is going to protect us from ourselves. I want to enable as many warnings as possible that still let us program, but make the language strict by default. So that's what I'm trying to do here. Make a note of that here. So on the topic of trailing return types, let's just go ahead and add for ourselves another little handy function. Oh, goodness gracious. So this can return quite literally anything. -w int in bool context. Oh, come on. Are you serious? Let's go ahead and try that. Int in bool context. As long as we're trying to make this as strict of a language as possible. Yeah, that didn't change anything, as you already said. Int in bool context is already enabled by WAL anyhow. That's unfortunate. I'm just kind of curious now. Warning, suggest explicit. Nope. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right, whatever. Whatever, compiler. Whatever. That's what I have to say about that. Yeah, so that's kind of terrible. I'm just not going to be able to use Restreamer because I have no way of deleting these comments from spam bots on Twitch. Yes, format shortcut. Alt-Shift-F. And you can see it here. Or Control-Shift-I on this. There we go. So what did you say that is on Windows? Okay, says Darth Vader. Darth Vader. I didn't know I didn't know you programmed in C++. That's fascinating. Wonder what that says about the Death Star. Let's see, where are we? So we've made a couple functions. Now on the topic of this function, now you'll notice a couple things. One is that I'm defaulting to using const wherever I can. And that protects us from ourselves. I'm saying inside this function, I do not expect to modify either of these two values. We need to talk about references versus values at some point here. So let's just make a note about this. So that'll be whatever. References versus values. We'll talk about that. Thanks to it's expecting, if it isn't expecting, if expecting non-zero value. Yeah, I just want it to warn. Let's see. So Nisha wants to ask an off-topic question. You can try. If it's so off-topic that the spam bot filters you, then no, you cannot ask an off-topic question. So we've created a function and we've got this thing that can return anything. Now for a trailing return type here, we can give it one, but it's kind of pointless. And it really is just, it truly is pointless, and it's really not even worth the conversation at the moment. So we can leave it like this and say it just returns an auto value. If you really, really wanted to, you can do that, but I'm not going to do that for the sake of this example. I'm going to say this is just auto return type deduction. Well, that's awfully specific of you. Sure, I'll change that. Okay. Does compiler support cling tidy? Yes, it does, but cling tidy doesn't support the things that we are currently doing. So I'll show this again for those of you who didn't notice it. I add cling tidy. I get error from cling tidy saying that it can't find source location because, well, oh, actually, we specifically tell cling tidy to use C++20. --p equals C++20. Is that actually a thing with cling tidy? I didn't think so. So cling tidy doesn't seem to be helping us at the moment. It can't find the source location. Yes. So I can add two strings. Yeah, I can add anything with this function, although, we're going to have to talk about that. Let's see if we can try a little bit harder to get cling tidy. Yeah, that's build path. That was a useless help. Yeah, I think the compile commands JSON is how it was already should already be being passed to it. There's not much we can do here from here. Okay. So cling tidy is not a formatter. Cling tidy is a static analysis tool. So I was really hoping that we would be able to show it here, but we can't, and we don't have CVP check. So, oh, but we do have PVS Studio. Error while running tool. Yeah, okie dokie. Yeah, yep, can't help. All right, that's just where we are here. All right, we're gonna have to leave that alone. If I used cling trunk, would it use cling tidy from trunk too? The problem is clang trunk still does not support the C++20 features that we are using. See, doesn't support it. So it's quite the shame, actually. Got really hung up on that one particular issue. Yeah, header filter, but it's not gonna. Yeah, it's so cling tidy still has to be able to compile the input to be able to give us any analysis of it. So I think we're just stuck at the moment here. So yeah, we're using C++20, and the question earlier was, is C++20 stable? Yeah, it's absolutely stable. What's the support for C++20? And that might be, a fatal flaw in my plan here. But let's just go ahead and pull up CVP reference. We already had source location open. I'm going to go to the top page, and what I'm going to click on here is compiler support for C++20. So we've got core language features, and we're going to focus on these first two columns, GCC and Clang. And then we've got Visual Studio, but GCC and Clang are the main things that are accessible to us from Compiler Explorer right here. So we can see a few things where Clang is lagging behind. Simplify implicit lambda capture, lambda is an unevaluated context, conditionally trivial special member functions, that one is a problem. Class types and non-type template parameters still need partial support. And notice Visual Studio actually says that it fully supports all of these things. Const eval isn't fully supported in Clang. Coroutines are not parenthesized, and yeah, that's a thing. Modules aren't really supported fully by anyone yet. Lambda capture and storage, well, Visual Studio. Let's see. There's lots of things that are missing from Clang. So then we're going to scroll down here and see there's lots of Clang standard library that's also still missing. And some of these things have bit us just in trying to do these examples. And so to answer the question from someone, say, wow, I have absolutely got to shut down the Twitch stream, I guess, or not do Twitch in the future if I don't have any way of managing all of this, right? So the question was from Tyrannosaur, does it use compiler magic or something? Yes, everyone It does have to use compiler magic to do source location. Then we have a question from the Hamoods. I think that's how they would pronounce that. Why is Visual Studio so far ahead of everyone? Is it just the money? So it depends exactly on what you mean by money. So I want to be clear here. You can very easily go and download Visual Studio Community Edition completely for free that has all of these features of C++20. That's easy to do. Now, the question is partially how much money is put into the compiler development. And yes, Microsoft has more money to pay their developers to work on Visual Studio. There is no Clang company. That doesn't exist. There's some contributions from Apple, some from Google, which are both, collectively some of the richest companies on the planet. But yeah, I don't know exactly why Clang is lagging behind or why GCC is not lagging behind. But yeah, clearly Microsoft is choosing to put the money that they can towards the development of their Visual Studio compiler. And yes, some of their features are not as well implemented. To respond to DBZ and 1K3. Why don't I use Qt Creator and have different kits to find and compile with them on demand? So we have to rewind to the beginning of the episode as to why I did not, and that is for you. It is so anyone can come and just click on one of these Compiler Explorer links and play. I want people to be able to play with C++. So here is just some example code that you should be able to very easily modify and just play with. And you can write your own functions, you can print your own outputs, and you can immediately see the result here without ever having to install anything on your computer at all, because everyone has a web browser today. So that is why the grumpy game dev that I have no use in using Qt Creator for this lesson about C++. I think, and I don't want to get too far out here, I think I covered what I wanted to. So hopefully, if you know someone who's got a little bit of an interest in learning what C++ is about, you might be able to, and I'll make sure that this is shared on the video description. You have someone who would, might be interested in this, and they can click on this and they can play. They can come here and they can change values and they can say, wait, well, is this number even? And get the output displayed from the compiler. And they can play and they can make their own things. They can say, something like this, whatever. Oh, sorry, yes, sorry, Grumpy Game Dev, I accidentally attributed something to you that was from Rodion. Let's see, on Twitch, you may also want to consider the software and game development categories instead of science and tech. I did not know that there was a software and game development category. I'm wondering if that's relatively new, because it's been like a year since I streamed to Twitch. How to attract new and aspiring developers towards modern C++. So that's what I'm attempting to do here, is provide a simple, clean, easy playground for people to play with. Clang used to be ahead of the others. Microsoft compiler was the one that's behind. That's absolutely true. Clang really kind of lit a fire under the other developers about maybe 4 or 5, 6 years ago, something like that. They were ahead of everyone else and had much better errors and warnings than everyone else. And they really, encouraged, if you will, with friendly competition, the other compilers to catch up, and they did. And now here we are. There's a switch in bool context. Yes, we tried that already. That did not work. because that is already enabled by W all and it did not make any difference. Oh, so you're telling me that the category game dev is about 6 months old. Okay. Now, I still am going to have the problem of if I'm doing simulcast on Twitch and YouTube of how to actually manage chat messages and that kind of thing on both of them. And also, I'm not allowed to monetize my Twitch channel if I'm simulcasting on YouTube, unfortunately. That is a requirement by Twitch that I have to do and it has to be an exclusive stream if I want to have the opportunity to monetize it. So, I want to have Twitch out there so that I've got a little bit wider audience, but at the same time, I don't want too much of my audience on Twitch because then I'm going to lose out on the potential for some revenue. And this does take a fair bit of effort, just for the record. C++ needs to get better at cross-compatibility. I'm not sure what you're referring to there, because in all honesty, I'm not just trying to be obtuse or anything here. C++ is the most cross-platform. Let's take, for example, Firefox and Chrome. They're both written in C++, and they work on every single device that currently exists. So there's that. How do you get an embedded programming job with this is just becoming Q&A time now. How do you get an embedded programming job with a CS degree? Here, let's do something. Just a moment. I should be able to do this. And for the sake of, now close your eyes if you're in a bright room or a dark room or whatever. Let's just go ahead and switch this to dark theme. Oh no. Do this. Okay. The last question I was trying to answer is, how do you get an embedded programming job with a CS degree? You just need to, in my opinion, find a company that is doing embedded development and get whatever kind of job you can there, and then start volunteering for all the cool embedded jobs. That's kind of how I got my start in embedded development, and it was a lot of fun. Do you consider C++ 14 modern? That already scrolled off the screen. Oh no, I see. That's down at the bottom with the way this particular window is being displayed. Yeah, I would say C++ is 14 is certainly more modern than C++ 98. I was just trying to go straight for C++ 20 for the sake of this. And other people, yes, it's true that getting a hello world program on your local machine is much longer in C++ than Python or Java. Well, I don't know if that's necessarily true. It's harder on Visual Studio. It's harder on Windows. On any Unix-based operating system, you can get a hello world and GCC running in 2 or 3 minutes. With regards to cross-compatibility, I found it to be difficult for projects and libraries to be built on multiple OSs. My entire career has actually been based on cross-platform development. So while I appreciate that you have seen those issues, it's just something that I've dealt with so often that it feels normal to me. So I don't know if I can speak to, outside of my experience, basically. To me, it's like, yeah, okay, there's going to be cross-platform issues, and they are where I expect them to be. And I often, from the very beginning, structure my program expecting and knowing where I'm going to hit issues, and then I don't have those problems in the future. Should your first job be in a cool company or any? Depends on how badly you need money, I guess. Start applying for the companies that you want to work for, and then keep applying to companies until you find a job. Can you make a Lambda const expr and pass it around at runtime? Yes, that's not a problem. That's a different topic for a different day. Today I was porting an SFML game to Linux and you had problems. That's interesting because I would expect an SFML project that already worked on Windows to be really easy to port to Linux. But I do my process generally in the opposite direction. I start on Linux and then I make sure I have Windows running. But that's a very good point, and it's one of the main things that I cover in my I'm going to do a little bit of shameless self-promotion here for just a minute. That is not what I wanted you to do at all. C++ Best Practices by Jason Turner. Okay. That's me. I'm Jason Turner. And please actually click on that link. Now this is going to look, oh, come on. This is going to look terrible. So let's just, only I knew how to use these tools. Okay. My C++ Best Practices book talks about making sure that you've got cross-platform support and that you are doing continuous integration. It's almost impossible to maintain cross-platform support unless you have continuous integration, making sure that the code is constantly compiling and test can execute on all the platforms that you support. Otherwise, it's nearly impossible. My streaming projects from the last year, I decided on C++ because I last coded in C++ professionally, so I've learned a lot of things because my C++ knowledge was dated. Okay. Fake it till you make it. You know, sometimes, yeah, you know, you volunteer. I wouldn't say fake it till you make it, but go in with honesty. Say, you know what, I'm really excited about this topic and I'd like to volunteer for it. And I'm the new guy anyhow, or lady, and see, you know, what happens. It's worked out for me often. If I volunteer for something, then I'm usually given the opportunity to try it. Shameless self-promotion is the best kind of promotion. Yes. So C++ best practices, as you can see, it's for sale for, you know, as low as $9.99. Or if you really want to, it is, you're very much welcome to spend, you know, $70 on this book if you want to, and give me more money. I have no problem with that. I also have a bundle, and that includes my new Object Lifetime Puzzlers book. And this is a, let's just go ahead and click on this. This is a puzzle book. Take me directly to the puzzle book, please. This is a puzzle book for a minimum of $4.99. This one is what I think is going to be very fun puzzles, and I'm actually doing the episode that airs on Monday for my normal channel is going to be talking more about how I'm attempting to make C++ more fun and accessible for average people. Now, I'm going to take the opportunity to make one more plug, and that is here. That you can get a print copy of this book if you would like to. And if you click here, there is color and visit author's page. There are color and black and white versions of the best practices book as well as the puzzle book. Okay, so done with shameless self-promotion. What would you say is a good example for profiling and benchmarking? I feel like that's just a topic that's outside of the scope of the conversation at the moment. How do you get a C++ job out of university when everything local is Java? Now, I feel like this might be sometimes like an overdone comment here. Do I update the EPUB? Yes, the ebook is getting updated from time to time. It needs to get updated again soon here. Okay. My beard is much improved. My beard comes and goes based on my whim. I will trim it shortly here, actually. All right. So how do you get a C++ job out of university when everything local is Java? Everything local is Java. Well, I'm not sure what to tell you there. I mean, obviously you might have to move, but there are a lot of remote C++ jobs at the moment today. And I do suggest that you try doing things like blogging and creating example projects on GitHub and that kind of thing. I've actually got my first C++ job was because of open source work that I did. And then my third C++ job and what moved me into contracting and training and all these things was also because of open source C++ work that I did. Now I know it's a huge time investment to work on open source, and not everyone has that available to them. But if you do have the time and you're between jobs and whatever, I do suggest that you start creating a project, playing around with it, get people's input, try to improve it over time, and that becomes a sort of a portfolio that a lot of people actually do respect. And let's see, I have no idea about programming. Well, hopefully if you go back and you watch the first episode in this series, the one that I did last week, and then this one, maybe you will appreciate a little playground to just play with. And I think I'm going to wrap this up in a moment now here, because we've gotten just to Q&A time, although, people are hanging around. So I don't know if you keep posting questions, I guess I'll try to keep answering them to the best of my ability here. Do you chase warnings? One shifted n times always complains of overflow. Does one shifted n times always complain of overflow? Let's see if one shifted n times always complains of overflow. If I do one shifted to the left 1 times, does that complain of overflow? I'm going to get a unused variable warning in a moment here. Yeah, so no, that's not complaining of overflow, and it's also not overflowing. One shifted to the left 1 times is equal to the binary literal b 1 0. If I shift it to the left 2 times, then I am going to get this value. If I shift it to the left 31 times, then I am going to get something like that. And that's still fine. If I shift it 32 times, yeah, that's definitely going to overflow, and you definitely did something wrong. Now, if you shift it n times, as you suggested, let's go ahead and do that. Let's literally shift it n times. Now, this code is not going to generate a warning because it's auto. And so the compiler doesn't know, like, oh, no. Yeah, okay, that's good. So the compiler doesn't know what types are being passed to it. We actually have to call it with something. So let's just say I'm going to make these both an int. And we might get a warning here. Let's see if we do. Oh, it takes a while to compile. Nope, still not getting warning. We do definitely have the potential for undefined behavior here, though. Like if I say that I want to shift the value 1 300 times, that's something that can't fit inside an integer. So yeah, if the compiler's warning you on something you're doing with the left shift, you need to fix that for real. So you need to fix that. If you did an explicit type ending to make it a size T or whatever, you'd have a bigger range. Yeah. Yes, right. Okay. Is it necessary to learn Haskell in order to master template metaprogramming? I would say absolutely not, because I've never mastered Haskell, and well, I try to avoid template metaprogramming these days. Const expert is so much better for that kind of thing. But yeah, I definitely fix the warnings that come up for the reasons that I just demonstrated. Don't certain rand functions take advantage of the truncation of shifts? No, not with shift left. Shifting left more than the size of the value is undefined behavior. And it's interesting. I'm going to see if I can find something here. Okay, so that's a shift. All right, here we go. So in the case of overflow, yeah, this is good enough for the point that I want to make. This is not official documentation from Intel, but it's documentation that was largely copied from them. So at the CPU level, if I do an arithmetic, if I do a shift left more than the size of the register that I'm shifting, I actually end up with undefined behavior at the CPU level. I've got an overflow flag, in this case, being set to an undefined value. That's no good. That's just something Haskell people tell you to bring them into your cult. Okay. How would you suggest learning the latest standards practices from a fresh start? Since Bjarne's last book was in 2013, would you start there and go through books up to C++ 20? No, I'm trying, and if you go back and watch this episode, I'm starting from C++ 20. Like, that's I would just say start with things that are talking about C++ 20. Don't work your way up slowly necessarily. Although I think I'll make one caveat about that, and it will be a shameless self-promotion. And it would be, let's see. First of all, let's talk about. You said Bjarne's last book covered C++ 11. Let's just double check that real quick, because I don't think that's correct. Maybe you are right. There's a newer version. Oh, here we go. A newer version is coming out in July 15th, 2022. So I do recommend Bjarne's A Tour of C++. I thought that this covered up through C++ 14 in the second edition, but now I am not sure. It says it even covers some extensions being made for C++ 20 and many things that are in C++ 17. So a tour of C++ is what I do recommend if you want to get an overview of C++. And then we've got my series called the important parts of C++. And I've got the best parts of C++ from CVCon. So I've got a quick overview of the most important things from C++ 98, 11, 14, and 17. I haven't covered 20 yet. Oh, that one's got 26,000 views. That's pretty cool. Will you still be working on your teaching to make a game project with the latest standards? There's ideas. We'll see. Yeah, no. The C++ programming language book. I'm back. I have the, what is this, second edition? What version is this? It's trying to clip it out here. Third edition. I have the third edition. That's funny. Okay, so I've got the third edition of the book, and it's kind of like reading a phone book. I have read the entire thing, but if you just want to get up to speed with C++, then I recommend a tour of C++. Only come back to that if you really want to get all the little details. All right. Yeah, I think I'm totally gonna wrap this up now. I was only planning a stream for an hour. It's been an hour and a half. Thank you everyone for coming on, and this was an interesting little impromptu Q&A time here, and I will make sure that a link to this ends up in the description for this video. And I don't know, I hope this was enlightening for at least some people. So yeah, thanks again. And like I said, I'll probably do another long stream maybe next week. What day is today? I think it's Friday. It is Friday. Look, it even says it on the screen right here. All right, so everyone have a great weekend, particularly those of you who are already like, in Europe or something and you've just ended your workday. So I will catch you all later.